Hi, and good afternoon. Welcome to the Brigitte Bartley Show. Today we have Ted Phaeton, which I am so excited he is here with us. Before we get started, I wanted to give a thank you to Old Europe Pastries for sponsoring today's show. Old Europe Pastries is located at 716 South Main Street in Greenville. They just opened about a month ago, but it's European pastries, locally roasted coffee, breakfast, lunch. They have wine as well, and they also have catering. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you stop in and say hello to Bobby. But I want to welcome Ted from Fox News on today's. But Fox is not his only title, and we're going to get into that. But he is an anchor meteorologist for Fox Carolina, based in Greenville, South Carolina. Co-anchors the morning newscast. He's also the host of No Rain, No Rainbows podcast, which I can't wait to dive into that. And also the founder of Modern Man. And like me, he's foodie, he's into fitness, he loves the outdoors and all of that. So, Ted, welcome to the show.
Bridget, thank you for having me.
Because this is technically, because you're on air at what, 4:30, or you have to be at work at 4:30?
On air at 4:30. That's when we start.
Okay, so what time do you wake up?
2:20. The alarm goes off at 2:20, and that's unnegotiable. No snooze button. 2:20, I'm up.
So is this lunch for you? Like, we're in the daytime typically.
Usually this is dinner.
Okay.
This is towards like the end of the day, but that's based on my schedule. The way I handle my day, this is pretty much lunchtime still, because I have an active lifestyle, as you mentioned. It's kind of hard to believe I do those things, but they keep me busy and they keep my schedule full.
Yeah, and that's something, because not only are you with Fox Carolina, but you've got the podcast and the Modern Man, and then I know tomorrow night you're emceeing at a gala, so you definitely juggle a lot on top of your relationship, on top of the social life. You do stuff for GVL Hustle, so you definitely manage a lot. So one thing that we've had a lot of people curious about is how you ended up in Greenville, but also how you became interested in the weather.
Okay. So I told that story this morning at Generation Kids Strong to a group of kids about my first memory of weather was when I was really little. It was 1993. I think I was 6 years old. There was a huge snowstorm. School day, I'm helping my dad shovel. And the wind's blowing. I open the face of the shovel to the wind, and it just picks me up and throws me. And I thought it was a good time. My dad was scared. My mom was freaking out, like, come inside and don't go outside anymore. But that always stuck with me, and I think that's like my first memory of weather. It's one of my earliest memories, and it really didn't bite me again until college, when after my first year of college, I was studying computer science. I was finding out the hard way it wasn't for me, so it was a perfect storm of not into what I was studying, joining a fraternity. The chains are off, so end of my freshman year of college, I had a 1.9 GPA, and I'm on academic probation, not sure what I'm going to do. I'm on vacation with friends, and I see a bird dive into the ocean, and I'm just talking to my friends about the tide and all this stuff, and my friend just looks at me, and drinks might have been involved here, but he just looks at me, and he's just like, how do you know all this stuff? And I just told him, I said, hey, it always interested me. Mm-hmm. And he said, we had a great meteorology program, and I made my decision then and there. I was like, well, when I go home, I'm canceling my whole syllabus for my sophomore year. I'm signing up for weather classes, and that's what I'm going to do. So I declared my broadcast meteorology major, and 3 years later graduated with a degree.
That's awesome. And now you are officially certified through the National Weather Association.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so do people ever come up to you in public and blame you for the weather?
All the time. All the time. If the weather's bad, they'll kind of give me a look, and they say, oh, Ted, really? When's the sun going to come out? And I always laugh. It's like, if you're going to praise, or if you're going to blame me for the bad, I'd like some praise for the good.
Right.
And I used to always say, I'm always on the losing battle, because, they'll be like, oh, thank God for this beautiful day. But if it's bad, it's like, oh, why is it raining, Ted?
Right.
So I'm like, come on, man. Give me some good, too.
I know. I've wondered how many people. And then there's people. So one of the questions that we had from somebody, we had actually several questions coming in, but one in specifically was, why is our air quality been terrible the past few days in Simpsonville?
Yeah.
And it's been at 100 to 119. And we were talking about that before. You totally knew what that meant. Yeah.
So a lot of times they talk about ground level ozone, which for those watching or listening, and if it's going over your head, let me break it down for you. Ozone, it's O3, and it's dangerous to breathe a lot of that in. And that happens usually in the morning when you have really hot temperatures mixed with a lot of NOx emissions. And NOx emissions, that's a fancy way of saying the smoke that comes out of your tailpipe from your car. So 7:30 in the morning every day, I-85 backs up because of all the traffic. You have a lot of cars out on the road, so you have a lot of that smoke coming out of the car. You mix that with a hot summer day when the sun is beating down and temperatures are kind of ramping up into the upper 70s and 80s. What happens is a chemical reaction where you have ground level ozone. That becomes dangerous to breathe in, so that's when they'll put out in air quality. So as you know, past couple of days, it's been pretty hot in the morning. So I would kind of say that's probably the reasoning behind it.
There you have it. There's your answer.
Yeah.
And so that's just interesting. So you've transitioned, but you're doing the anchor position now. You're not really doing the weather anymore. Because the other morning when I watched, just to be honest, I don't watch the news.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm just one of those people. I don't even watch the news, and it's honestly just a time thing. But I watched the other morning, and I did notice that you were just doing the anchor position. So you're not even doing the meteorology or the weather anymore.
Yeah, not so much. I've still done it here and there. This past May, I actually was back in the Weather Center forecasting and delivering the forecast. Last year for Hurricane Florence, I was in Myrtle Beach and Murrells Inlet and covered the storm. Covered it live, which I actually really enjoyed doing.
I was going to ask if you were like a storm chaser.
I do.
Do you love the
doing
adrenaline off that? You're one of those that stand while the wind's blowing like 50 miles an hour. And
there's something about it. I don't know. I think I've learned to embrace uncertainty, and those are the times where I've gotten to meet people that were in it and actually help. I've gotten to hear their stories firsthand and share it, but I've also gotten to see something I spent 4 years studying, something I've kind of read about. And when you see it in person, quite frankly, the pictures don't always do it justice.
Right.
And to be there and experience it, I don't want to say it's something exciting because lives are at risk here, but it's something that it piques my nerves and makes me feel alive when I do it. So I've always enjoyed covering hurricanes, specifically the past 5-6 years I've been in Greenville, South Carolina. Every major storm, named storm that affected the South Carolina coast, the East Coast, I was lucky enough to cover. So,
and that was actually another question from somebody off social media. What does the hurricane season look like this year?
Yeah.
Can you even project that?
So you can predict the likelihood of a hurricane season being above or below normal. And this is coming from a spot of, I don't want to say a spot of ignorance, because I still know the weather hasn't left me, but it's also something that has to be monitored, paid attention to. And I'm not well read currently on what the current hurricane season is. But what we pretty much look at between the National Hurricane Center, between our meteorologists, we look at patterns, and there's a lot of science and different ripple effects that can affect a hurricane season. And whether it's El Nino, La Nina year, whether we're seeing a wetter or drier than normal pattern, that's going to kind of gauge if we're going to see above or below normal hurricane season. I can say that in recent years we've seen, and I'm pretty sure many would agree, we've seen a lot more impactful hurricanes than in the years prior. I'm not going to speculate as to where that came from, but I think what we are seeing, I think we're already on Flossie, which is F in the alphabet, and the hurricane names, they go in order. So we're already on F, so we've been seeing a pretty active season so far. We always say it only takes one. It only takes one major hurricane to impact the coast to have a significant impact on the country. So regardless if it's above or below, just pay attention, and you can expect the hurricane season to peak around August into October.
Right. Well, thank you for that too.
Yeah.
And so going into being an anchor, because we were talking about this before we got started, which you were telling a secret, and you don't know my secret, but we'll share secrets.
Yeah.
Where I was saying, to me, this position is easier versus reading off of a screen, because for me to process the words and to read, and to me this is like more in flow to just have a talk show or just to talk more fluently. Yeah. And you were like, well, you don't know my secret.
Yeah.
That's like one of my challenges.
Yeah. My secret was, I was that kid in high school. I don't know if anyone could relate when you had to read out loud in class, and each student takes a paragraph. I was the student that would count heads and pre-read my paragraph, and I would read that thing 3 or 4 times so I could memorize it because I was terrified of reading out loud. And then you always had a student in the class that was an overachiever would read 2 paragraphs, and that would throw me off, and I'd freak out like, oh no. But reading out loud scared me. And when an opportunity to be in morning anchor came up, the first thing I thought was, I have to read prompter. Like, I have to read out loud every day in front of people. So it really scared me. And because it scared me, I kind of felt inclined to say yes. And that's been 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And where I am now, I'll be honest, to start, it was a little rocky because not only are you reading out loud, now you're reading words that are moving.
Mm-hmm. And you're live.
And you're live. So there's no going back. There's no taking back what you said. And you can pre-read the scripts. You could read them ahead of time. But then you have breaking news situations sometimes where we call it cold reading. Mm-hmm. The first time you see the script is when you're on air. And, that's when the sweat glands really used to open up. And they still do. But now I think I've gotten a confidence about it. I've become a very avid reader. Like I read in my free time. I read books that I'm interested in, and I'm always reading. And that's helped me with my on-air delivery, and it's helped me gain comfort. So it was a fear that I had to overcome, and I think it's still a fear I have to this day, but I keep doing it to get better.
That's so interesting. So similar to that, when I was it was middle school and high school, reading comprehension was always a challenge for me. So I always tested very poorly on the standardized test. So I was that kid. You were talking about you were that kid. I was that kid that was pulled out of her classes while all my friends were in AP English.
Yeah.
I was in the other building in remedial English because of the reading and the comprehension. And then I had a speech impediment too, which probably was connected to the reading comprehension. So then to fast forward 25, 30 years later that now I have a microphone, like it's still, there's like some fear with it, but that's in turn, we take those steps to overcome those fears. That's originally why I started doing like Facebook Lives and Insta stories. Is just to help overcome that fear. So
Keep
that's interesting.
exposing yourself to it, right? And
Absolutely.
to quote Dr. Seuss, "Oh, the places you will go."
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Well, and that goes into with what you're doing with the podcast, which, I've told you this numerous times, which so much admiration I have for you. When I first met you was at the GVL Hustle, but, and I kept saying, I was telling my friend Logan, I said, he looks so familiar. And I asked her like 5 times, she's like, well, he's on the news. I'm like, that's where I know him from. I think I've seen like on billboards and advertisements and stuff. But to hear you speak and you had such a positive energy about yourself, and then I heard what you were doing with the podcast and Modern Man, and just have so much respect for you with how you're using your voice from the community, the respect that you've earned in the community, and you're using that to better mankind, basically worldwide, because your podcast, the No Rain, No Rainbows, you talk about, when I was looking at it, like from fitness to marriage, relationships, health, business, like
Life.
Everything. Yeah, you talk about everything. So what prompted you to start that?
Yeah, well, thank you for those kind words. It's really humbling. And, I do hope to have an impact, a positive impact. And I think what kind of pushed me to start that was we just talked about, working with Fox Carolina and moving over into the anchoring role. I got to a spot in my life kind of looking around I never saw myself being, and that was kind of a wake-up call for me. It's like, okay, I don't want to say I stumbled to where I am because it took work, but I think I was just working and I was just following the path in front of me, and when I stopped and smelled the roses and saw where I was surprised with the progress I made, and that also kind of was the start of my reflection, the things I've been through, the things I got through, which I could touch on really quick. But I think I saw where I was and how I got there and what I went through. And I wanted to share that story, and I wanted to find out other people's story because I don't know anyone that's successful that hasn't gone through hard times, right? I think we all have that in common. We all have our own different struggles, and my struggle looks different than yours. But, I think what I am skilled at is resonating with other people and accepting them for who they are, knowing that they've had a struggle. And if you want me to share mine.
Absolutely, yeah, I would love, and I call this the story behind the glory, because one of the things that I, tell people is facts tell, story sell.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to hear more about that story.
So for me, it started after I graduated, and I was working at a law firm. And like I said, I graduated with broadcast meteorology. I was ready to be a weatherman. That wasn't in the cards. That jobs weren't available. I worked at a law firm in a cubicle, wasn't for me, and I kind of spiraled into a dark place. And on top of that, I started having stomach issues. Ended up getting diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which, sparing the viewers the gruesome details, it wasn't good. I was at one point in a hospital bed, and the surgeon was telling me they're going to do a CAT scan. If they don't like what they see, they're taking me to Mount Sinai in New York City, and they're going to take my large intestine out. Well, I'm 23 years old at this time, and that's earth-shattering for a 23-year-old to hear. And a lot of the doctors say, well, what's your stress level like? Well, my stress level's pretty high at work. What's your diet like? Well, my diet's pretty bad because, I'm semi-depressed. I don't like what I'm doing, and I'm eating 20-piece chicken nuggets from McDonald's and a large fry and a sweet tea like 2-3 times a week. Like, I was in a very bad mental place, which led to a very bad health place. Mm-hmm. And in the hospital, there was no one to blame but me. So coming out of the hospital, I had to change my mindset. I changed my energy. I changed my positivity. I fully embraced the job that I was at. And in a year's time, I got a job in Saginaw, Michigan to be a weatherman. And I moved out there, and I completely changed my life in those 12 months. And while I'm shopping to furnish my new apartment and be a weatherman, I'm so excited. And I'm like, this is my dream job, that I'm finally making it. We're in a thrift store buying some things to, put around my apartment. And I see this little wooden plaque. It's almost like it was hidden, but it was just sitting there. It just spoke to me. And it said one phrase. It's a little wooden plaque painted on it. It said, "No rain, no rainbows." And that hit me. And to this day, it hangs up in my office. And I feel like I'm getting a little emotional right now, but it's just like, that summed up everything I just went through in those 4 words. No rain, no rainbows. And from that point on, it's been my life mantra. It's been what I believe. And like I said, it's in my office still. And that's kind of what I live by to this day.
I thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Rainbows have always been my sign from God where, you're like, okay, like, where are you? What's going on? But then I would always see a rainbow, and then I'd see a double rainbow. And mm-hmm. I've never heard that exact phrase, but then it would always be relevant to, okay, you've got to go through the storm to get the rainbow.
Yeah.
And to know that there's a rainbow at the end. That's cool that you still have that plaque in your office.
Oh, yeah. And I plan on keeping it for a very long time. And, I mean, it's just something that stays with me because I just come out of the storm. Mm-hmm. Just came out of a very dark place. And it wasn't the end of my storms, but it was kind of like the validation where, you go through the rain, but there's a rainbow at the end of the storm. Mm-hmm. And it makes the storm, it doesn't make it any less severe, if you would, to kind of use the weather terms. Mm-hmm. But, it's kind of like saying, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a reason for your pain. And when you get there, it's all going to be worth it because, just working in the news business, whenever we have these big storms that hit and we're wall to wall and we're covering it and we're covering all the storm reports, what we also get is a lot of inboxes, a lot of people emailing the station pictures of rainbows in their backyard while they're driving home, and it hits people. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just it's something that speaks into what we experience in the real world.
And so I love how you channel the podcast because you're basically sharing other people's stories.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things for me why I decided to start speaking out more with my story years ago is because I heard another lady's story. It inspired me to, okay, I can do this. Mm-hmm. Like we were very similar with our backgrounds, with our nationalities, with business, like everything. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if she can do it, I could do it. And then I thought, well, because she shared her story, I'm where I am. So I felt an obligation to share mine and speak out more and live a little bit more out loud. And now sharing other people's stories too, because it's definitely relatable. Because I think do you feel like people look at you and think like you just have this perfect life on camera? You've got like this great figure, beautiful girlfriend, like lovely city. Well,
the biggest thing I think I realized lately is we admire other people. We admire other people's lives because we don't see, what's backstage. if you watch Broadway, anybody that loves Broadway, or even anybody that watches our newscast, you see what the cameras want you to see. You see what's on stage, but you don't see what's behind stage left. You don't see the ropes and the pulleys and the gears that are back there to kind of make the production go. And I think it's easy for us to admire the show and forget what's going into making it work. We forget the difficult times.
Right.
Because we like to focus on what's good. Our lives are hard enough, right? I have enough issues and problems, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But when I go out in the real world and I see other people, I want to see their success because I'm trying to get away from my pain.
Right.
So I think we compare other people's success to our pain, and that almost paints a false picture. Because by no means is my life perfect, and by no means is it easy. And if it looks that way, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to make it look that way.
Well, it's kind of how social media is. I mean, it's a highlight reel. And so, there's people out there that keep it raw and real and vulnerable and authentic, and you're definitely one of them. I did a post last week, and it was talking about Howard Schultz with Starbucks and Walt Disney and Harry Potter, and it was basically saying if you feel like you're at the end and you're exhausted, want to give up, then something new is about to come. And you made the most perfect comment, and I was like, how perfect from a meteorologist to say it. But you said, it's like the smell of the rain before you feel the first drop.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember that post. And
I do.
It's just, I was like, that's so true. Because when storms come, which by the way, I'm scared of thunderstorms still this day. They freak me out. Because they're so unpredictable. And that's where it just scares me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a control person. So because they're so unpredictable, and the loud thunder, even though thunder, isn't it just like hot and cold air?
Yeah, well, it's pretty much the sound of lightning.
It scares me. It scares me. But I love the smell of it. And when you gave that analogy, I'm like, that's so true. Because I know that, we have, you're in your business and we've got like the podcast and, Jess is in her business and stuff, but we work and work and we work. And sometimes it's like, when is the fruit going to start to ripen?
Yeah.
And then when you said that, and I was like, oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
You almost sense it, right?
Right.
And I think, and I see what you do with your social media, which I love is, I could sense the authentic you. And I'm the kind of person where if you look at my social media, yeah, there's a lot of photo shoots and professionally taken pictures. And those pictures sit in my phone. And I was telling somebody, I'll look at the picture. If something's weighing on me and I have something to say that's of value, I'll post it. And, to that point, I posted something about patience because that's something I'm going through right now is working on my patience. And I post that up. The smell of the rain before it actually falls. I'm sure you could sense a lot of weather analogies there. I mean, you could take me out of the weather center,
Totally.
but the weather's still in the boy. But I think we're all working towards something. I think a lot of people, we're on this planet. We don't necessarily know why, but we want something. We want purpose, right? And we're looking for validation. We're looking for comfort. And you can almost feel when it's coming. And the funny thing and the ironic thing is it's when I put myself in the most uncomfortable and uncertain situations that I start feeling the comfort come.
Right.
So I don't know if that makes sense.
Complete sense. I can completely resonate with it. And I think sometimes too, people are looking, because I'm guilty of this, where we're looking for permission to say, it's okay to do this. It's okay if it's outside the box, or it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like if you feel led to do it, then absolutely do it. So how can people find the podcast? Where do you have that?
Yeah. The podcast is No Rain, No Rainbows. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. It's also on Google Music, and it's No Rain, 3 periods, No Rainbows. But if you just type it in, it should pop up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how often do you have episodes come out?
Once a week.
Okay.
And they come out on Wednesdays. So I'll be working on getting a podcast up today.
Nice.
And they've been good. They've been really good. It's been a journey. I think I've learned a lot from the guests that I've had on the show. Definitely got to give Andre Suttles a shout out because the podcast is not possible without his help. And it's something that I jumped into. And this is, if I could share this, it's something that I jumped into before I was ready. And I think that's how you have to do it.
Right.
I think I told Charles one day, I've sat on the idea for a podcast for over a year. And I finally said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to record it on my phone, and that's what's going to happen. And it's almost like the universe waits for you to take initiative to give you what you're asking for. But Charles says, no, this guy Andre just DM'd me. He does videography and he's looking to connect. So I'll put you guys in touch. So then Andre comes in touch, and my friend Matt Snipe says, hey, you could use my podcast equipment to get yourself off the ground. And we were able to record our first podcast with some professional microphones and some nice cameras and have a viable product to start. And it kind of took me taking the jump, like, hey, I'm going to record this on my phone, for kind of everything to kind of fall into place. So the universe just was waiting for me to tell them, yeah, I want this.
Just to be like, to be in receiving mode.
Exactly.
To even receive it. Yeah, I've seen some of Andre's work. You have, I think it's on your page, or maybe I saw him. Did you just do a video on your page that you posted on your page?
He might have. He's been doing a lot.
Okay, yeah,
lately.
because I was looking. I've seen his stuff before. He is good.
Yeah,
Definitely
he's talented,
good.
and he's hungry too, which I love.
I mean, but so I was talking to one of my friends in LA yesterday, and so he does a podcast, and he and his wife are network marketing. They do a lot of online marketing, and I feel like you have this too, where there's like this certain genetic or DNA in some of us to where we're always hungry. Brendan Burchard talks about that he has a book, High Performance Indicator, and he talks about high performers. And it's not like we don't do it for recognition, for materialism, but you just know that there's more.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, right? Like you just like you're hungry because you know there's more people, there's better ways to do it, the opportunity.
I think I just, I'm here to live life, right? And I don't know what's out there, and I'm here to experience it. And, one of my problems is I say yes to so many things.
Guilty.
And I put so much on my plate, and that has led me to all the things I'm doing now, and I've had to consciously slow down, because if somebody were to call me now and they're like, hey, Ted, do you want to try out this new thing? Or my friend got a piano. He's like, hey, do you want to learn piano? Yes, I want to learn piano. I want to learn Spanish. I also want to learn Mandarin. I want to do all these things that I don't think there's enough time to do. But someone's like, you're always busy. You're always hungry. And I think it's just there's so many things I want to experience. I say yes to so many things because I don't want to live with the regret of not doing it. I've been skydiving twice, and I recommend it to anybody to at least go once, because, at the end of the day, you'd rather say that you've tried it and you've done it and didn't like it than not do it at all.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm all about experience. I want the experience. But you're such a giver, because even, with you at GVL Hustle, with, the event you're doing tomorrow night. Oh, by the way, you were in Talk Magazine's Top 10 Stylish, talking about tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Massive congrats.
Thank you. I mean, I think everyone's seen my whole closet already, so I don't have anything else to show.
But that's so cool.
But, yeah.
That's so cool.
It was an honor. I think I've been lucky enough to have friends like Charles. He keeps my fashion sense on point. He's the kind of person that don't laugh, I'll send him a picture. If we're going out to an event, I'll send him a picture and I'm like, hey man, what do you think? He's like, switch those shoes. I was like, all right, I got you. What are you wearing?
So guys do that?
Yeah.
Girls, girls do it.
I'll say a disclaimer. When I say guys will do it, I'm not speaking for all men here. Me and Charles might be in the minority of men that do it, but we care about how we look, and we want to look good. And Charles quotes Tom Ford. So to quote Charles quoting Tom Ford, your style and your fashion is a form of manners. So being here on the show, I could have came with a hat disheveled with my gym clothes on. I was wearing my gym clothes before this, but I wanted to change, wear a tie, and look presentable, because I want to be respectful of your show, respectful of your time, and when you dress nice, I think that resonates with other people.
Right, and that's true. That's a great observation. Another thing too, I feel like as we dress, we also feel better about ourselves too.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, I could wear, I think probably for about the last 6 days, I've had no makeup and just worn gym clothes and beach clothes. But sometimes, and luckily my business allows me to do that, but then there's sometimes I just want to dress up in respect for you, obviously being here today in respect for you, but then also just to walk downtown Greenville in a dress and heels because I can.
Yeah. I mean,
just
you think
because
about
it just makes you feel good.
As kids,
it is true.
How often would we play dress up?
Right.
And the boys do it too. They would probably, as a kid, I would dress up as a football player, and I'd pretend like I'm the football player wearing my pads and stuff. And, we have a sense of fantasy when we dress up, right? And, even if you're going out for a night, fellas, here's a tip for the fellas. Take your woman's favorite dress, put it on the bed, leave a card, and say, I'm picking you up at 5. We're going out to dinner. And you wear a suit. You guys will have an amazing night, and you'll feel like $1 million. And the suit doesn't change who you are, but it's just you get to play pretend for a night.
Yeah.
And fellas, if you do follow through with that, please let me know how it goes.
Well, and two, for the men to take initiative. That means a lot for the man to just say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. This is what time we're leaving. So
Oh, yeah.
All right. Men, take note. Okay. So going into Modern Man. So you created the podcast, which now, so the podcast is available nationally. Anybody can plug into that. Modern Man, is that just a local event?
That's available nationally also.
Oh, okay, cool.
So the Modern Man is actually a sub-series of the podcast. So if you subscribe to No Rain, No Rainbows, every new Modern Man will be one of the weekly episodes. It's also on YouTube, No Rain, No Rainbows, and we just made the Modern Man YouTube space for it too.
Nice.
The web space is be coming out soon also. And that lives on multiple platforms. Tyler Harris shares a lot of the Modern Man content on his page as well. He's one of the panelists that I've